This video presents declassified and licensed material of the Global Institute of Logic and Cybernetics.
High-resolution tools allow us to sequence and edit the genome with molecular precision, yet we cannot reliably command the macroscopic shape of living tissue. This is the primary operational gap in modern biotechnology. We lack predictive, programmable control over anatomical geometry during regeneration. The origin of this failure lies in a missing structural layer within the canonical hierarchy of biological science. We map the molecular fabric at the base and the life sciences fabric at the organismal top. Between them sits an unresolved void. Gene networks alone fail to explain large-scale coordination. They provide cellular machinery, but not the geometric blueprint. Anatomical form requires an intermediate, reprogrammable control manifold. To achieve predictive regenerative control, we must move past the chemistry-only substrate model and isolate the regulatory layer directing multicellular shape. That missing transition layer is the bioelectric bridge, the electrodynamic transduction corridor completing the hierarchy. We define this mathematically as the active state space of living ionic asymmetry, operating through canonical primitives, membrane units, ionic gradients, and gap junctions. These primitives operate as distributed tissue-scale control variables. They encode, transmit, and update anatomical instructions across macroscopic distances. We must stop treating this bioelectrical activity as passive descriptive biology. It is a steerable, engineering-grade phase space. Formalizing the bioelectric bridge provides the exact mathematical foundation required to actively stabilize, redirect, and drive anatomical correction in living matter. To steer this phase space, we define the canonical dynamic state bundle. A living tissue is never a static snapshot. It is an active trajectory in motion. This trajectory is governed by two primary control variables, coupled membrane potential and the intercellular gap junction topology. We mechanically redefine regeneration as morphogenetic error descent. The tissue navigates a reachability landscape, moving down a corrective corridor toward a healthy attractor basin. The system continuously calculates its spatial error against a target, minimizing it until stabilizing at the bottom. When a tissue falls out of this corrective corridor, it slips into maladaptive basins, where regeneration stalls or oncogenic patterns take hold. Biological healing is a geometrically defined trajectory. It can be mathematically tracked, and it can be manipulated. Certain failure states form pathological locks. These are robust maladaptive attractor basins that trap non-healing or oncogenic patterns behind steep geometric boundaries. Theorem BE21, the basin transfer theorem, dictates that anatomical reprogramming requires forcing the tissue out of this trapped state and into a new target class. Applying a single-channel voltage intervention frequently fails to breach the basin wall. Bypassing this attractor requires mixed control, combining topological rewiring with voltage cues to redirect the trajectory. Escaping the lock places the tissue into a new corrective corridor toward a healthy target. Ultimately, strong anatomical reprogramming is mathematically equivalent to forcing a transfer between target relative basins using combined control vectors. Standard biological experimentation relies on an open-loop approach. We apply a static perturbation and observe the final pattern shift. This architecture inevitably fails in complex organisms. It cannot account for mid-course state drift or the existence of hidden basin boundaries that deflect the trajectory. True tissue engineering requires a different operational standard, the closed-loop validation architecture. We continuously measure the bioelectric signature to infer the latent state, feed that into a control policy, and fire an updated mixed-channel corrective vector back into the system in real time. Passive observation alone is a dead end. Reliable form control demands that we operate the tissue as a dynamically steerable, aerative feedback system. Continuous closed-loop monitoring introduces a critical temporal advantage, the ability to predict terminal outcomes before they physically manifest. This principle is formalized in Theorem BE31, the early warning proposition. Shifts in the bioelectric bridge signature become detectable long before any gross anatomical divergence is visible in the physical tissue. This detection window allows for the interception and redirection of a failing regenerative trajectory before the physical structure begins to degrade. This makes the bioelectric bridge a predictive, control-theoretic science. Mastering the state space is the strict, non-negotiable prerequisite for programmable control over living form, breakthroughs in regenerative medicine, and synthetic biology.